Is Will Levis going to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft? Is Tyree Wilson going to go ahead of Will Anderson? Are the Detroit Lions or the Seattle Seahawks in on Anthony Richardson? Is there a chance that CJ Stroud drops out of the top 10? All that and more on this episode of Buy or Sell NFL Draft Edition.
NFL Draft silly season is here. Spencer Aguiar and myself are here for it. Can't wait to dive into this Buy or Sell NFL Draft Edition. Spencer, first of all, how are you? Are you excited for NFL Draft Week?
I am very excited for NFL Draft Week. You know, Jason, I've told you this before, like the NFL Draft, and I guess you and now Steffi specifically are the two people that can get me out of this golf world and into talking NFL. So, I kind of said it on the show I do with Steffi last week when in our match play show. I think the NFL Draft is probably my favorite thing of the entire year. I mean, you could put any sporting contest up there, and I would probably pick the NFL Draft over it. So, very excited to do this with you.
It's so funny because I feel like there's a couple of people that are like that also, and I am one of them. And you don't meet too many who are just like fully in on the draft season. I have talked to a bunch of buddies about this before, and I have said, this is my second favorite NFL day of the entire year. The Super Bowl is third. NFL Week 1, the anticipation of all of it, when all the games get going, red zone is probably my favorite, but this is definitely a close second. And you know, in terms of betting on it, this is absolutely no doubt my favorite event of the year. So what we're going to do on this show, buy or sell, tons of draft rumors flying around. Usually the Monday right before the draft, we start getting all of the best nuggets, but it also tends to be the silliest season of all. So we're going to run through probably about 20 different versions of buy or sell here. Let's start off at the top of the draft. We know pretty confidently that Bryce Young is going to go number 1 to Carolina, so we can pretty much bypass that at this point. The market suggests that's true. Pretty much everyone in the NFL world assumes that he's going to be number 1 at this point. The draft starts at number 2, the Houston Texans. D'Amico Ryans, their new head coach. Nick Caserio, who comes from the Belichick tree, notorious for not giving out any real information here. So the market suggests that Will Levis could be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft right now. And if it's not him, and they've said, you know, we're probably out on CJ Stroud at this point, it's probably Will Levis if we're going to go quarterback. But it seems like there's a real possibility that they end up with a defensive lineman here. And everyone assumed for a long time, well, it's got to be Will Anderson, right? Maybe not. Maybe it's Tyree Wilson. So I'm going to give you 2 versions of this. Buy or sell that Will Levis could be the number 2 pick in the draft, and then buy or sell that Tyree Wilson would be the pick if they go D-line over Will Anderson. What are your thoughts on that entire situation?
So I agree with everything that you just said there with the CJ Stroud thing. Like that to me is the one answer of everything that's in play here, that CJ Stroud is not going to go number 2 unless you have some sort of a trade out situation that comes into play. So I agree with you there. You know, I did a mock draft for Champions Round yesterday. I followed the market. I put Will Levis at number 2 in that draft. I don't know if I necessarily buy the news that's coming on with it. Like it's enough so, and the market moved, like I see it minus 135, minus 140 at places. And anytime that you get those late movements in the final week, those are always more important than what you get at the beginning of the cycle here. So I'm not necessarily saying that the market knows something, but there was enough credible money that came into play. And I think enough real stance that's being taken to where this could be Will Levis. I've kind of been a proponent from day one here that the pick is, at least for the last like week and a half now, that the pick is going to be Tyree Wilson when it's all said and done. I think it's a really intriguing, I don't know what the number is. Maybe you can tell me right now. I haven't seen it today and we're recording this as a Monday right now, but Tyree Wilson to be the first defender off the board. I mean, that's one of those plays that I think, like, if you look at this, sure, it could be Will Anderson in this spot, but there's a lot of positions to me to where like Will Anderson's almost dead to be the first defender off. And there's a lot more that can come into play where Tyree Wilson can be the first defender. And that's even to where if it starts quarterback, I think it's even more dead for Will Anderson to be the first defender. Like, I think you reach, I mean, I guess unless like it goes quarterback, and then the Seahawks take him at 5, that would probably be the one out that you would get in that spot. But I guess at the end there, I'm going to say bye to both because, like, to me, I would flip a coin whether I think if they stay at the pick, whether it's Tyree Wilson or it's Will Levis. But I mean, the market right now is at least suggesting that it's going to be Levis, but we had this discussion a couple days ago, Jason. Like, it's definitely an overreactionary market that took place with it. Enough so to where I'm willing to put some credence in it, but like I said, it's 50-50 to me.
Yeah, so last year, you and I had this discussion. We actually did a mock draft the day of the draft. And at number 2, we kind of overread the market. The market was moving heavy towards Kayvon Thibodeau in the late stages, that he would be the number 2 by the Lions. And in the end, it was probably a layup that it was going to be Hutchinson if the Jaguars passed on him. Again, we overread the market. I think that may be happening right now. And the guy that I keep looking back to is Lance Zierlein, who is dialed into Houston like no one else. He called both of their first-round picks last year, and at no point has he suggested that they are in on Will Levis. In fact, he has tweeted a couple times that he thought it was between Stroud, Wilson, and Anderson. Now we're pretty confident that Stroud is out, and he has also said that Wilson may be the favorite in that building, giving his upside compared to Anderson. So I'm kind of with you. I certainly buy he's minus 145 in the market right now to be the first defender is Tyree Wilson. I could see him going at 2 or 3. So I certainly buy that. The Levis one, yes, I'm supposed to listen to the market in this case. And I certainly think there's a chance that he could be the number 2 pick. But if you ask me gun to head right now, I'm with you. I think it's Tyree Wilson at number 2, which opens up a ton of possibilities here at number 3. Our next buy or sell would be, we got this report from Albert Breer and Peter King on Monday morning in both of their Monday morning quarterback articles, which are gold this time of year, that perhaps Arizona is looking beyond trading out, and they might not take Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson. Maybe it's Paris Johnson, who they really want at number 3, and perhaps it's Devon Witherspoon that they really want at number 3. Are you buying either of those as candidates to go at number 3, or do you think it's more likely that the Cardinals would trade out of that spot and draft those guys at 7, 8, 9, 10 if they got a trade down?
I've kind of been under the assumption that if they stay at the pick, they're going to take whatever. I think they're going to take Tyree Wilson if he's on the board, but I still think that if you have a spot where the draft starts, Bryce Young, Tyree Wilson, I'm still more of a believer that the pick would probably be Will Anderson at that moment. I'm sure Arizona would love to move out of the 3rd slot and to get back somewhere in this draft. But like, I guess the question, Jason, is who's really a buyer at this point? Like, the Titans, can they really afford, like, do they have enough capital to move up to the 3rd pick? I don't know. The Raiders have been a funky one if you want to play around with that. Like, the Jimmy Garoppolo contract is brutal in 2023, but you have outs. And if you think that this is your one chance that you can get a franchise quarterback, and if you want to move up for Stroud in this position, I think it's going to be cheaper than it would normally be to move from 7 to 3, just because there's not really, like, I'm not saying that the Cardinals are going to give it away, but there's so, like, it's one of those things to where if you look at what the Cardinals are saying now, every answer has been given at some point from all these teams to try to move teams in and out of the spot that they're at. And I think now the Cardinals are in the spot where it's like, well, what happens if we don't take the position that you expected us to take, and now we take offensive line and we move back in the draft? Now is anybody curious to do this? And I think they've put themselves, or I mean, I guess they're forced into a bad position at this point to where it's like, if you can't make a move, you can't make a move. But I guess the one answer that would tell me more than anything is they probably do have a board where there's a lot of names that are close, and they are okay with the concept of moving back. And like another name, Christian Gonzalez, I think they could go corner in that spot. So there's a lot of players that seem like they could be in the play. I just think if push came to shove with it, they would be more likely to go one of the defensive linemen there.
Yeah, and I think that they have Wilson ahead on their board than Anderson right now. So if it did go Young and then Levis, I think that they would take Tyree Wilson or try to trade down if someone wanted to come out and get Stroud. Let's take a look at this right now. Which teams do you think actually could come up to number 3, realistically? So I have Indianapolis if they wanted to jump ahead. So if it's, we'll get to this in a second, but if they like a quarterback, would they try to jump the market and just get up to number 3? It probably wouldn't cost them all that much to do so. Seems like something that, Chris Ballard doesn't really like trading up at all, but, maybe worth it in that scenario. Seattle, from everything that I understand, probably out on quarterback, although there was some buyback on that today. It seems like maybe there's a chance they would be interested. Detroit seems like if a quarterback slipped to them in the right spot, they'd take them potentially, but it doesn't seem like they're, trying to trade up for that. They'll kind of be happy with whoever drops to 6. Vegas, I think you and I both think that Vegas is actually kind of out on quarterback at this point. Be interested to get your take on that in a second here. Chicago, no. Atlanta, no. Philly, no. Tennessee, potentially. And then the interesting one is really Houston, if they want to. So if they take Tyree Wilson and they're like, you know what, screw it, we're going to move up to 3 also, get our quarterback. Do you do that? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think that's what's interesting with this is I would like to say at this point that the Texans' second quarterback almost certainly would be Will Levis. Like, I don't think that that's steam and fluff that's being thrown into the space here. So I'm sure there was some thought on their end that they would be able to move up, whether that be to 7 or whatever the number would have been. They could have gone from 12 to 7 and taken Will Levis there. That has been completely thrown out the window. Like, that's not going to happen. So if you want Will Levis, you have to move up to 3. It's just, I don't see them doing it. And I guess I have a little bit of a different take than you do on the Raiders. Like, not that I necessarily think they're going to make that move because it doesn't make sense. Like, if we look at everything that they've done, they traded a first rounder last year to get Devontae Adams. They have now signed Garoppolo to where, like, it's going to end up being a $30-something million deal in 2023 if you try to get out of this. I don't know. It's just like, they're the one team to me, other than the Colts. Like, I could see that 3-4 swap. That certainly is something to where they could do that. I think the Colts are better off just staying at 4, let whatever quarterback fall to them. I mean, I guess it seems like the reports are that they like Levis, but everybody seems to like Levis at this point. And I don't know, like, if you want to believe that or not. I mean, that could just be nonsense here. But like, the Raiders to me are really the only team that actually makes sense to make a move. And that's kind of why I don't think a move is going to happen, because the Cardinals are going to end up getting stuck and the Raiders will end up standing pat with where they're at. And like, Las Vegas has so many other positions that they need. And like, kind of the point that I was making with all of that is they are in all-in mode right now where they're trying to win right now. I don't know if you necessarily want to all of a sudden invest in a quarterback. Like I said, I don't think it would be as much trade capital as you normally would have to get to make that swap there. But I would rather them take offensive line. They could also go whatever cornerbacks on the board with them. Like, those seem like positions of need more so at this point. And I kind of think probably the decision was made for Las Vegas at the end of the day when they signed Garoppolo to this contract. So that feels like a very McDaniels move, to where he has Garoppolo in the building now. They're going to roll with him and they'll figure this out in 2-3 years and move across from there. But I guess, like, to answer that question, obviously that was a long answer there, Jason. They're probably the one team to me that makes any sense. Like, I don't think Houston's going to go up. Maybe they're the second choice. So I don't think Tennessee has the capital to do it. And then, like, that Indianapolis move is just so basic. Like, I mean, they're going to get the quarterback that they want, but like, nothing really changes in the draft with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason that Houston's not going to end up moving up is if they really want the quarterback at 2, they're going to take the quarterback at 2, and they'll get whatever defender they want at 12. It's not that big of a difference. All right, so let's get to Indianapolis. We'll do this pretty quickly here. Buy or sell that Will Levis is QB2 on their board.
Yeah, I buy that. I don't think Irsay and company over there are very good at bluffing. I think when news comes out with them, it's like them, the Steelers. There's certain teams that they kind of tip their hand every single draft process. And it's funny, Jason, you and I were talking about it on the opposite end of the spectrum with the Chicago Bears. Like, I texted this to you. I think they're pathological liars. I legitimately believe that anything that comes out of their mouth is just a lie at this point. Like, they are involved with every single player, yet want to trade the pick away for anybody who wants to move up for those specific players. And they are in one of those spots where I mean, there's certain teams out there that are just trying to stir this market and figure out what can happen. And I think the Bears pick will be very intriguing because, I mean, I don't know if you believe some of the reports of the players that they want or don't want in spots, but there's a lot of ways they can play it. Like, yeah, they can stick in that spot, but they want to move back. And if it's for a guy like Darnell Wright or it's an offensive lineman like that, like, you can move back in the draft and probably still get him if you move back just a couple spots there. So I think they're an intriguing team, but I think as far as the Colts go, yes, that Will Levis is the second quarterback on their board.
I guess we could call this right now. So I'll do the Bears pick. So I think that they're going to get – I think what they really want is they either want Paris Johnson or Jalen Carter. I don't think that Carter's going to last until 9. I'm not sure based on the reports today that Paris Johnson is either. If they get screwed out of both of those guys, I think the third guy on their board, honestly, is Bijan Robinson. But I don't think that they would take him at 9. I think that they would take a trade and move back, and I think it would be with the New England Patriots. I think the Patriots want to come up and get a cornerback if Witherspoon or Gonzalez is still there. So they swap 9 and 14, and the Bears pick Bijan Robinson at 14. That's like my wild call out there right now, but that's kind of how I see this playing out.
I agree with you on that. Like when we talked yesterday about this, I think Bijan's going to go off the board in some funky trade like that it's not going to just be, unless it's the Falcons. I haven't necessarily been a believer that they're going to take him, but they are the betting favorite for a reason, I guess, for him to land there. But if he doesn't go to Atlanta, like this has always felt like some weird trade that you didn't see coming, a position like you just mentioned where a team moves up or back to get the player that they want. And I think there's a really good chance that Christian Gonzalez is going to be at the board number 9 there. And I could see the Patriots wanting to go up and get him, and the Bears go back to 14, and all of a sudden they get Bijan, and it's a perfect fit for everybody.
Yeah, so I guess I'll jump ahead a little bit here. Buy or sell Bijan Robinson as a top 10 pick. He's about even in the market right now to be a top 10 pick.
I lean towards no, just because I don't know exactly, like, I don't know where he's going to go off the board, and that's what's so difficult about this. And yeah, you can make the argument that there's only 15 to 17 players that have a first-round grade, and it is a notoriously weak draft where at some point he's going to go, like, he's going to be a top 14-ish pick, somewhere in that range. I don't think he's going to the Eagles. I don't buy that. So we can remove him. I don't necessarily believe he's going to go to the Bears. So then it's like, if it's not Atlanta, he's not a top 10 pick. So I kind of
it's a trade.
Yeah. So I lean towards no with that. If they're trading backwards to get him.
Yeah. So I thought that he would be easily, and I had made this bet earlier, under 17.5. I don't think there's any way he gets past the Commanders. And you're right. There's only 15 or so first round grades. Every GM that's come out and said, and I actually believe them, is be like, usually we have 20 to 25 first round grades. This draft, we have 15 to 17. And after that, it's really not great. Any pick from 17 to 50 is pretty much the same player. I do think you get into the mid-teens here, and teams are going to be trading up if they have some extra capital to get one of these blue chip guys. And that's ultimately probably how I see Bijan going. The way that I foresee it is a little bit different than I see the Bears dropping back and still being able to get him. I do think there's a chance he goes to Atlanta. Terry Fontenot has drafted an offensive playmaker every draft that he's had in Atlanta. He's gone tight end. He's gone wide receiver. Why not complete it at running back? Next year, maybe they have a quarterback come in. I don't know. Chicago, I definitely 100% believe that Chicago is in on running back and in on Bijan. I just don't know if they pull the trigger at 9. The Eagles, I think they end up with an offensive lineman. They end up with, if Paris Johnson's there, they take him. If Skoronski's there, they take him. Maybe they would go cornerback just to complete the depth if Witherspoon or Gonzalez is there. But I don't know. Anything's possible with the Eagles, and I never doubt Howie. I actually think that the Eagles are kind of a candidate to trade up. Like if Carter's there at 7 for the Raiders, and the Raiders are like, you know what, we don't want Carter, and we don't care. You know, we have 4 guys graded the exact same here. We'll drop to 10. I could totally see the Eagles being like, screw it. Here you go. Here's our extra pick from the Saints. We're moving up. We're going to get Jalen Carter at 7. That's kind of how I think that plays out to me.
Yeah, in my mock draft, I had them trading up to 8 to the Falcons to get Jalen Carter. So I'm kind of in the same thought process there. I guess maybe the one reason why I have backtracked on that a little bit, and I don't know if I necessarily believe the news with it, but it does seem like the Eagles are at least somewhat interested in Nolan Smith. There are awkward boards that can come into play here for Philadelphia, to where I guess, like, if you want to look at the 2 offensive linemen and then Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter, I guess all 4 of them could be off realistically in a spot. And that's where I don't know what they do, to be honest, in that position. Like, I don't know what the answer would be. Like, it could be something wild like Lucas Van Ness that they end up taking, or maybe they had a different offensive tackle that they liked. But I kind of think I mean, this is obviously just speculation with it, but I think Jalen Carter is the preferred name that they want. And I think they're realistic that they can't get him unless they move up. And maybe that's too, and depending on how this board plays out, like I would not be shocked if they moved up to 5, if the board played out really funky in some weird way to where all of a sudden the Seahawks decide to move back. Like I think it takes a very precise board and it doesn't look like we're trending in that direction for that to happen. But 5 is in play if this gets really weird in the first round. 7 is in play for the reasons that you stated. I still think 8 could be in play. And like, you really just need to jump the Bears in that situation there. But assuming that they don't and they like Nolan Smith, it might just be one of those spots where they sit back and wait. And you either hope you get Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Nolan Smith, and, in some unforeseen world, Jalen Carter somehow falls.
All right. So speaking of trades in the top 10, buy or sell 3 trades in the top 10 picks.
I'll sell. I think it's hard to pull it off. Like, I think the most, to me, that it feels like you could get to, and this would be maybe even pushing it, would be 2. Somebody moves up to 3 and the Eagles make the move up for Jalen Carter. Like, those feel like the 2 realistic spots that could come into play. I still think it's more likely that it's 1 or 0 based off of that, though. Like, it's probably going to be some minor-ish move to where the Eagles move from 10 to 7. Or, I mean, you've thrown in another wrinkle to this equation here now with the Chicago Bears, which I guess if you want to add a third one, that could make sense. But even still, I don't think like that all 3 situations where there can be a trade, we're going to see a trade.
Yeah, I think that traditionally you'll see mock drafts have way more trades than actually happen in the NFL draft, especially in the top 10 picks. I think it's probably 1. Maybe I could get to 2. 3 seems like it's a little bit aggressive. All right, we're going to go through a quick hitter here. Buy or sell Jaxon Smith-Njigba as wide receiver 1 in this draft.
I buy it. I think we're going to see him. Like, I've seen the market on him move and fluctuate all over the place. And we're in this position now to where it looks like, and it's probably, I checked it like minutes before we came on. It might have something to do with the Aaron Rodgers trade that just took place. And maybe now they think 13 is going to be in place for Njigba potentially with it. But like over under 14.5 seems to be where that number's at. But I think Quentin Johnston is a borderline first round pick. You could, if you told me he went first round, I'd buy it. If you told me he didn't, I would buy it. I think Zay Flowers is dropping in the process a little bit as these last couple days have gone on. I like Jordan Addison. There's probably some spot there between the Chargers, the Vikings, the Giants. Like one of those teams will pull him off the board, but Njigba will go top 20. I just don't know to who necessarily at this point.
I wouldn't be surprised after the Rodgers trade. So in case everyone's watching, you haven't heard, the Jets and the Packers swapped 13 and 15 as part of that deal. And I think that the line was set at 14.5, thinking, would he get to the Packers and would the Packers take him? Now I'm guessing it's going to be at 13.5, thinking, oh, the Packers at 13. Maybe they would take him. Would he get past the Packers? That's my guess of where this lands. I don't know, but I definitely buy him as wide receiver 1.
The reason why the trade makes sense too, at least in their mind, I would think, to swap those picks, there's probably some chance that he would have gone to the Patriots at 14. So you jump the Patriots now and you take that out of the equation. So yeah, I mean, he might end up going there at 13. That kind of seems like the most likely spot.
All right. A quarterback that we haven't talked about that much right now. There's 2 that we haven't really talked about, but I want to get into Anthony Richardson really quickly. Do you buy or sell the idea that Seattle or Detroit could be in on Richardson and they've just been playing it super coyly?
I buy that Seattle could be in on him, maybe more so. I mean, like, those are 2 really good positions for him just because you already have the quarterback there. He can sit there for a year or 2. He can get more accustomed. I don't know if I necessarily buy Detroit going that route. I think if you look at the market, I've seen a lot of movement take place over the past 24, 48 hours at particular books that are at least throwing it into the possibility that he might go 5 to Seattle. But if he doesn't go to Seattle and this draft, like we keep talking about these weird boards that can come into play. And there's a lot of boards here that do not work out for Richardson specifically. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but specifically if it gets to 11 and he's still on the board and the Titans decide to pass, like I don't think it's inconceivable that they don't take quarterback there. That's kind of been the penciled in position to where If a quarterback falls there, specifically Richardson, they're going to take him at 11, but I don't know, Jason. I'm not necessarily a believer that that's 100% going to happen. And if that doesn't come into play, we're in another spot again where it's going to take a trade up from some team, I think, to probably land him. I don't know exactly where he'd go off the board. You could say the Vikings are going to be in play to trade up. I think Seattle there with their 20th pick could try to move up and grab him there. So
what about the Lions with their 18th pick?
The Lions with the 18th pick. Like, there's a lot of those teams that we're talking about. Like, I don't think it's happening at 5 or 6 for that reason, but there are going to be trade-in spots that are going to occur somewhere in that like middle teen section to where teams are going to be looking to move back. And then there's going to be teams that are looking to move up for a quarterback if one does slip. So I say that's actually my prediction for this draft. I think Anthony Richardson does not go in the top 10. I don't think he ends up going to the Tennessee Titans. And I think one of those 3 teams that we just mentioned ends up moving up to one of those selections and ends up grabbing him.
So Minnesota, Seattle, or Detroit trades up from the later half of the first round into somewhere between 12 and like 15, 16-ish to go get Richardson.
I know the Commanders say that they're fine at quarterback, and maybe they are. I think, though, if you're making the move, you'd have to jump the Commanders at least to be sure. So, yeah, somewhere between 12 and 15 would probably be the spot. And maybe the answer, like it seems, depending on what the Texans do with the first pick, I think they're very prime trade back candidates in this draft for that second.
I mean,
pick.
there's also the world where they pass on Levis at 2, they take Tyree Wilson, and then Richardson falls into their lap at 12, and maybe they're just like, okay, we'll just take Richardson.
That's a possibility. I mean, that's another way that this could play out. Yeah.
Okay, so the last quarterback that we haven't talked about is CJ Stroud, who seems to be maybe QB4 at this point after, he was favored to be QB or the first quarterback off the board, the number 1 pick there for a while. Do you think there's a chance that if he falls to 6, that the Lions would be like, okay, we can't pass on Stroud there?
I think that's more realistic if the Lions take quarterback, that it would be Stroud over Richardson. I know, like, from a stylistic sense of like what that team is building there, Richardson seems like it would make more sense just because Stroud is more NFL ready. He's ready to play right now where Richardson can sit. But at some point, it just may be talent is talent, and they had him higher on boards than other teams did, and they decide to make that pick there because I think Detroit's in this position right now. And I think the problem is I think Las Vegas is in this position too, to where they think that they are teams that are going to be competing here and they're not going to be up in this draft anytime soon. And that's kind of like the one reason why I keep going back to Las Vegas, to where maybe they try to make the move because, yeah, you're stuck to this Garoppolo contract, but you now need to grab a quarterback because you think you're a better team than you are. Like, we could make an argument of what the Raiders are actually going to finish this year, but they think that they're better than they are. So they're going to maybe try to like secure the future. And maybe the same answer can be given about Detroit there, to where you lock in Stroud, you solve the quarterback position, and you don't have to worry about it in 2 years. And you're kind of a team that's fringe playoffs and can kind of be picking in that back half of the draft. And you're not going to get this spot to get a player like Stroud if he's that high up on your board.
All right, last one on the board, and this is kind of tangled into 3 different questions, but it's all about Hendon Hooker. Buy or sell him as a first-round pick at this point?
I'll say sell. I mean, markets have kind of gone all over the place. I think a lot gets made about that 5th-year option with it, but like a 5th-year option with Hendon Hooker makes him like 60 at that point. So it's not really like it necessarily matters with that, but I don't know. I think he probably ends up being a 2nd-round pick when it's all said and done.
Okay. Do you think that there's a team like the Saints, or we talked about the Vikings, that would take him at the back half of the first round? Specifically, I'm talking about the Saints here, sitting at 29. They have Derek Carr in the building. Do you buy that they're potentially in a quarterback in this draft?
I don't know if they use a 1st-round pick on it. I mean, if you were to like power rank the teams that I think would be the most likely to, it's probably them or whoever you want to say is going to end up trading up into the 1st round. I mean, if you want to say, like, we keep going back to all the same answers of like these teams. If you want to tell me that Seattle decides to trade up, but I don't think Seattle necessarily makes sense with him when we look at what they're building there, but I don't know. I mean, maybe a trade up candidate more than anything. I don't think the Saints take him though with where they're at. I think they have other pressing needs.
All right, last one on the board, and we'll get out of here. This one is straight up for your podcast host of Match Play, Steffi Smalls. Giants are picking at 25th. They just traded for Darren Waller, yet both Albert Breer and Peter King mocked a tight end to them today. Now, they also took Daniel Bellinger last year. I'm just doing this so that I can send this to her afterwards and she can have a conniption fit. Do you think the Giants could potentially be in on tight end, whether it be Mayer or Kincaid or maybe Darnell Washington at 25?
I don't understand what that report is. I mean, two people making it that are respected in the space, sure. Like, I don't know what they know or what has been said to them or what they think is going on there, but I can't imagine that they go that route. I think they're going to go secondary. That's kind of been where I've been at in this entire process. I think they'll take whatever cornerback is left on the board of those top handful of players. Like, I have them taking Emmanuel Forbes right now. That's kind of more of where I think they're going to go.
She doesn't know this yet, but I put in a bet for her for $25 and plus 7,500 that the Giants would go tight end with their first pick. So hopefully, maybe on Thursday during our live stream, that will pay off some heavy dividends here for her. All right, that does it for Buy or Sell 2023 NFL Draft. Spencer, thank you for joining me. You can listen to him all over the place on all of his different golf podcasts, including a Champions Round on our show, Match Play with Steffi Smalls. Tell the people what else you got going on.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at @TeeOffSports. Obviously, as I said at the beginning, this is a very specialty thing when I leave the golf world to come do football. This is about the one time of the year, and you're about the one person that can get me to do this. But you can find the show that I do with Steffi. That's something that I'm very proud of that we are putting together. We're trying to be unique and different with it. We're trying to take a different angle from the golf betting world and the entertainment world with it. So I really hope if you haven't yet that you have an opportunity to check that out. And yeah, if you haven't done so yet and you're interested in golf, follow me on Twitter, and I release a model every single week that is kind of my bread and butter of how I get all my information and all my answers. So I always say, Jason, like, if you can just be well-versed and you research, you're already ahead of everybody else, whether that be from DFS or betting. So like, if you're going to be putting in the time and the effort and the money to do this, try to get as much information as you can out of it. So that model is something I'm very proud of.
It is the best model out there, and we're going to continue to see some more winners, maybe some daddy winners at some point against Steph at some point this season.
Only can hope.
Reminder for everybody, I'll announce this first off, 4 p.m. on Thursday, an hour before the NFL draft gets started. We're going to do a live stream live from the Champions Round Studios in Santa Monica, California. It's the first of its kind that we've ever done. It's called Draft Hub. We're going to have some special guests come in. We're going to live stream the entire draft. There's going to be a big board showdown game. There's going to be some drinking games. I might throw pizza against the wall. So tune in, see what happens, see how buzzed I get, how angry I get, how angry Steph gets when the Giants end up taking a tight end. It'll be a really, really good time, a great second screen experience for the NFL draft. Until then, good luck on all of your NFL draft fantasy, gambling, whatever you got going on. Enjoy the draft, and we will talk to you guys soon.